It is the spring of 1876 in Bath County, Kentucky, a quiet agricultural community where life's rhythms are dictated by the seasons and soil. The meteorological records for this particular day note a perfectly clear, cloudless sky. There was no wind, no impending storm, and no unusual atmospheric pressure. But then, something completely broke the calm. For several minutes, chunks of raw flesh began raining down from the empty blue sky, pelting the ground and the rooftops. When the shower finally stopped, the residents weren't left with a fleeting collective hallucination. They walked out of their homes to find physical evidence, bloody strips of meat measuring up to 4 inches long, scattered across their yards. To understand how meat falls from a cloudless sky, we have to look past the initial supernatural panic and examine the gross physical evidence left behind in the dirt. The initial shock quickly gave way to a morbid, pragmatic curiosity as townspeople gathered to survey the debris. They didn't run from the anomaly. Instead, locals began picking through the grass, actively collecting samples of the strange sky meat. And in their effort to identify exactly what had bombarded their town, several residents actually cooked and ate the mysterious flesh. The impromptu taste testers couldn't agree on a verdict. Some claimed it was beef, while others swore the flavor and texture proved it was mutton or venison. Human senses are notoriously unreliable during a bizarre event, especially when panic and suggestion are involved. Resolving this anomaly required shifting away from the palates of local farmers and toward objective forensic analysis. Before the scientists stepped in, the public offered their own theories. The leading idea was a meteorological anomaly, a localized tornado that had swept through a slaughterhouse or a farm, lifting debris into the upper atmosphere. But a cyclone leaves a distinct atmospheric footprint. The pristine, windless conditions observed over Bath County that morning physically contradict the mechanics of a tornado. The next logical explanation was human intervention, a highly coordinated, large-scale prank executed by locals. Yet, evenly distributing hundreds of heavy chunks of meat over an area thousands of feet wide from an altitude high enough to simulate a literal shower requires aerial logistics that simply did not exist in 1876. With weather and human pranks physically ruled out, the investigation was forced to narrow its focus directly onto the biological makeup of the meat itself. The remaining samples were packed up and shipped off to scientists and medical analysts for proper laboratory testing. Using early microscopy, these experts performed a histological analysis, closely examining the cellular structure and tissue composition of the Bath County specimens. The results proved that the local taste testers were entirely wrong. The samples contained no muscle fiber consistent with beef, mutton, or venison. Instead, the cellular makeup identified the material as lung tissue and cartilage. Early reports speculated it came from a horse, though it was ultimately classified as generalized mammalian respiratory tissue. Identifying the samples as lung tissue narrowed the search. This material belonged to the internal respiratory system, suggesting the debris originated in an animal's stomach rather than on a butcher's block. This biological profile directed the investigation toward the local population of buzzards and vultures. Vultures possess a highly specific biological defense mechanism. When threatened or startled, they violently regurgitate their most recent meal midair. Because they gorge on heavy carrion, this reflex allows the birds to rapidly drop body weight, giving them the emergency lift needed to escape predators. The timeline aligns perfectly. A flock of vultures gorged themselves on a dead horse, flew over Bath County, became spooked by something on the ground, and simultaneously emptied their stomachs from high altitude. The physical evidence in the grass directly matched the biological reality of avian regurgitation. The mystery of the falling meat was solved by basic anatomy. The Bath County shower persists in regional museum exhibits and historical trivia, evolving from a source of 19th century terror into a staple of American folk history. But the incident survives as a perfect case study of what happens when human panic collides with rigorous scientific reality. The biological reality, a flock of startled, vomiting scavengers, offers a physical explanation that replaces the supernatural theories with the mechanics of avian survival. When confronted with the seemingly impossible, the answer usually lies in empirical evidence rather than fear. And perhaps most importantly, You should never taste mystery meat that falls from the sky.